Carlos Alcaraz is about to hit a backhand through the middle of the court, and Daniil Medvedev, he's about to do something pretty weird because he's about to hit a backhand that you rarely see on the Pro Tour. And in this video, I'm going to show you the strategies Medvedev used to beat Alcaraz for the first time in 3 years, including a strategy called the Punisher that he pretty much ripped off from Novak Djokovic. So Alcaraz has hit this ball through the middle of the court because he wants to prevent Medvedev from being able to generate an angle. From the middle, it's more likely Medvedev's backhand is going to go through the court like this. And this is what Alcaraz is looking for because he can run around that and hit a forehand. So let's look at another point to see what happens when Alcaraz does get that forehand. We've got Medvedev down here, Alcaraz up there. Medvedev hits a backhand through the middle of the court, giving Alcaraz that forehand. So this is where Alcaraz can go on offense in 3 ways. And the first is an inside-out forehand, and the second is an inside-in forehand. So Medvedev, he has got to split backwards in this situation so that he has time to get to the either inside-out or inside-in. But when he splits back like that, it gives Alcaraz that third way to go on offense, which is the drop shot. And the reason the drop shot here is so effective is because Medvedev is splitting backwards to cover the 2 possible forehands, he's moving in the wrong direction to cover the drop shot, right? So he's splitting backwards, he has to stop, change direction, and track this thing down. A lot of times he's not even gonna get there. So that is the dilemma that Medvedev has been facing against Alcaraz his entire career. So what is this weird shot that he is gonna hit that allows him to avoid the trap that Alcaraz keeps setting? Well, Alcaraz is waiting on this backhand so he can run around it. And what Medvedev hits instead is an inside-out backhand into the open court, which is super rare on the Pro Tour because typically if you're going to go into the open court like this, you don't do it with your backhand. Medvedev would actually run around the backhand to hit a forehand over here. So when he slides over like this, it is perfectly reasonable if you're Alcaraz to expect this ball to come back cross court and not be an inside-out backhand. So Alcaraz completely surprised by this shot, and he barely gets to it. He hits a weak shot back. And then what Medvedev does here is this short ball. Medvedev, he doesn't run around this ball either with his forehand. He keeps it on his backhand. Alcaraz rightly anticipates this ball is gonna go into the open court, and Medvedev goes inside out again to win the point. So coming up, we've got the Punisher, which Medvedev pretty much just ripped off from Djokovic. But first, let's take a look at Medvedev's primary and secondary patterns against Alcaraz. So Medvedev's primary pattern was something called the backhand cage, which I learned from Craig O'Shaughnessy, analytics guru. And it's pretty simple. You just direct all of your fire at your opponent's backhand, regardless of what shot they hit. So this is great against aggressive players like Alcaraz, where you force them to take all the risk and to change the direction of the ball. And in the point we're about to see, Medvedev's hitting all of these backhands into the cage. Alcaraz tries to check out by going down the line. Medvedev's gonna move over and he's gonna hit 2 successive forehands just straight back into the cage. Then the rally gets reset into a cross-court backhand rally, and then Alcaraz gets impatient and he tries to check out down the line and he makes an error. So this is not a sexy strategy at all, but it works incredibly well at the pro level, also works incredibly well at the club level. So one other thing with the backhand cage, because you might have missed it, it was a little bit subtle, is Alcaraz serves, and you might think, okay, I'm immediately gonna hit this backhand into the backhand cage, but that is not what Medvedev does. So what Medvedev does, and this is something he might have stolen from Djokovic, I don't know, but Djokovic certainly popularized this, is he returns directly back at Alcaraz and at his forehand, which is a little bit odd perhaps, but the reason he is doing it is Alcaraz is serving, he's landing inside the baseline. So he's coming out of his service motion, and his forehand has got the bigger backswing. And so if you hit a good deep return at your opponent's forehand, when they're coming out of their service motion, a lot of the times you're gonna rush it and you're gonna get a weak reply. And that is exactly what Medvedev gets. He gets a ball that is not particularly well struck, and then he can start directing his fire at the backhand cage. The danger of trying to do it off of a return, and particularly off of a first serve, is it's just tough to control those balls. And if you don't hit a good shot over here, then Alcaraz, even though it's a backhand, will be able to take a full swing step into the ball. So the return at the forehand is actually incredibly effective, which then allows you to get into the backhand cage. So now we got Medvedev at the top of the screen, and let's talk about his secondary pattern, which is to attack the forehand, which is actually like, it's kind of a crazy thing to do when you're attacking Carlos Alcaraz's forehand, but it is super effective. So Medvedev is gonna hit a good shot to get Alcaraz on the run here. And the primary pattern, when it's the backhand cage, your opponent is obviously gonna be expecting balls to go here. They're gonna be leaning on it. So Alcaraz hits a pretty weak shot back and rightfully is like, okay, the ball is gonna be going at the cage. So the secondary pattern here is Medvedev is gonna hit two successive forehands back cross court, attacking Alcaraz's forehand. And both times Alcaraz kind of has to stop, change direction. He's not set, and he eventually hits a weak ball down the line. And now this is a situation where Medvedev would attack the cage. And the reason here is because you can now generate an angle off of the court. When Medvedev is standing here, this ball goes through the court. It's easier for Alcaraz to track that down. But when you get a ball here, then you can get the guy running and really put him on defense. So Alcaraz, he defends cross court, and Medvedev, he goes back to attacking the forehand. Alcaraz barely gets there, hits this like weak ball cross court, and Medvedev, to his credit, he thought about backing up, but he thought better of it and actually took the ball out of the air. Didn't hit a great volley, but because he had done so much work to get Alcaraz out of position, Alcaraz can't track this ball down. So coming up, we have the Punisher, which Medvedev pretty much plagiarized from Djokovic. But first, I want to introduce you to Bert. This is our new AI tennis coach, and he can watch you serve, show you the breaks in your kinetic chain, and how to fix them. So just go to the App Store, search for Bert AI Tennis Coach to take your first lesson. Okay, so the Punisher is coming right up, but I actually have like one more point I want to make about the benefits of attacking the forehand because it's a little bit subtle. So if we take a step back, at the top of this video, I was talking about Medvedev's dilemma, and we're just gonna have Medvedev be at the top of the screen for this segment. So Medvedev, when he tries to get the ball to Alcaraz's backhand, a lot of the time Alcaraz is gonna run around it, and then that's when Alcaraz has these three ways to go on offense. He can go inside out, he can go inside in, and because Medvedev has to defend both of these forehands, he has to split backwards, and that's when the drop shot becomes super effective because Medvedev, he's got to change direction and try and track this ball down, and that's just extremely difficult to do. So, interestingly, when you are forehand to forehand, the drop shot no longer becomes something you have to defend because you are always going to be at like your appropriate depth behind the baseline because the forehand is the bigger shot, so you're already going to be giving yourself space to handle all of Alcaraz's pace. There's no situation where Medvedev is now going to be splitting backwards like he would when he was backhand to backhand. So the bottom line is, when Medvedev and Alcaraz are forehand to forehand, Medvedev doesn't really have to worry about the drop shot because there is no change of depth like there might be when Alcaraz, if they're backhand to backhand, he runs around a backhand to hit a forehand. So the Punisher. Well, I just said that Medvedev copied Djokovic, so let's first watch Djokovic doing it. So Djokovic and Zverev are going to be in a backhand to backhand rally, and the Punisher starts when Djokovic hits a backhand down the line. That is the first shot of this play, and the goal is to get Zverev into his forehand corner. Now, from here, Zverev is going to defend cross court, and the second shot of the Punisher, well, Djokovic is going to rip this forehand down the line. So the first shot was designed to get Zverev into the deuce court, into his forehand corner, so that the second shot would force Zverev into a running backhand. And so from here, Zverev is going to defend cross court. He's going to hit a weak slice. Now here's the trick with the Punisher. Even though Djokovic has all this way to go from the deuce court to the ad court, he's not going to hit a backhand. He's going to keep going. He's going to run around his backhand, stay on offense with his forehand, and from here, he's going to rip a winner down the line. So now let's see Medvedev using the Punisher against Alcaraz. And Medvedev is going to serve T, Alcaraz returns middle. And remember, the first shot of the Punisher is to maneuver your opponent into their forehand corner. So in this case, Medvedev hits a forehand. Djokovic, a second ago, hit a backhand down the line. Either one works. You're just trying to get your opponent over here with that first shot so that they have to defend cross court. And then your second shot, you're going to rip the forehand down the line. And that is what Medvedev does to get Alcaraz hitting a running backhand. Now, from here, Alcaraz is going to defend cross court, bringing us to the third shot of the Punisher, where you run all the way around, don't hit a backhand, you run all the way around to hit a forehand. And we saw Djokovic rip this thing down the line for a winner. Medvedev, he's going to do the opposite. He's going to go inside out, and he is going to wrong foot Alcaraz, who's leaning this way, has to stop, change direction, and he gets a racket on it, but he makes an error. So at the club level, one of the challenges of running the Punisher is when you are in a backhand rally with your opponent, if you go down the line at the wrong time, very easy to make an error. So here is a good rule of thumb you can follow to still run this play but limit the number of mistakes you make, is basically take the ad court here and divide it in half, take the deuce court here and divide it in half, and if you are standing on this hash mark or inside towards the tee, then it's okay to go down the line, because if you catch the ball late, it's still going to be in, right? But this exact same shot, if you are standing too close to the sideline, it is now out. So this is a safe way to play smart, aggressive tennis. Obviously, the same thing would apply on the deuce court as well. If you're standing to the right of the hash mark, if you catch the ball a little late, catch your forehand late, it's out. But you hit that exact same shot on or inside the hash mark, that ball is still going to be in. There's one more rule of thumb with the Punisher. This allowed Medvedev to beat Alcaraz, and we're about to see him do it in a different point. So when you hit this second shot down the line and you get your opponent hitting a backhand on the run, and they hit that defensive backhand cross court, if the ball is short, so you run all the way over here, but the ball is short, whatever shot you hit here, Medvedev's about to rip it down the line, you could rip it cross court, doesn't matter. Whatever shot you hit, follow it to net, even if your volleys aren't particularly good. Medvedev's volleys for a pro, not particularly good, but he still wins this point because he set everything up perfectly. That is the rule of thumb you also want to follow. So I got one more thing to show you. This is super cool because check out this chart. We ran Carlos Alcaraz's serve through Bert. We ran Daniil Medvedev's serve through Bert. Here we have Alcaraz at contact. This is a wireframe of his body and the racket. Here we have Medvedev. This is a wireframe of his body and the racket. And you can see their body positions are pretty similar, which is unsurprising since they're both two of the best players in the world. There are some subtle differences, like Alcaraz has a little bit more shoulder over shoulder. He's 14 degrees from vertical, while Medvedev is 36 degrees from vertical. And then if we look at another one of their charts, this one right here is some of the key metrics. And the one I'm going to highlight is racket head speed. So they're literally like virtually identical on racket head speed. Alcaraz is at 43.16 miles an hour. Medvedev at 44.12 miles an hour. Oh, and by the way, this is the vertical racket head speed, bottom to top. And here we have the jump height. This is actually where you get like a pretty big difference between the two. Alcaraz jumps 14.92 inches off the ground. Medvedev is only 8.68, so bigger difference here. But obviously both of them have great serves, but what happens when we compare an amateur to, here we have Medvedev. So this is an amateur named Dan that we ran through Bert. And now you can start to see some very big differences between what the pros are doing and what an amateur is doing. So Dan is making a mistake called Statue of Liberty, where your body is basically completely upright. You can see Medvedev here has some tilt between his lower body and upper body. And then Dan is basically holding the racket straight up like it's the Statue of Liberty. The racket's kind of oriented this way a little bit, whereas Medvedev, it's oriented to the left because that puts his wrist in a stronger wrist position. It's a more stable contact. So when we start to use Bert to measure serves, you can start to see mistakes that you otherwise wouldn't necessarily know about. This is another one of my favorites. Here we now have Dan versus Alcaraz. So this is tracking the back hip. So you can see that there's like a grayed out wire frame for both Dan and for Alcaraz. That is stage 3 of the serve. That is max knee bend. So when your knees are bent the most. And then the bolded wireframe is contact. And then the red arrow is tracking the direction of their back right hip from when their knees are most bent, stage 3, to contact. And you can see Alcaraz, he is straight up, which is the direction, that's the direction you want your back hip to be going. But Dan is, he's too far to the right. So basically he's jumping in the wrong direction and he's releasing his energy in the wrong direction. So Dan is basically leaving miles an hour on the table. He could be hitting harder, but he's not because he is jumping in the wrong direction. He's also jumping late because if we look at this chart here, this is also tracking the back hip, but it's now the timing of the back hip. So here we have Dan, here we have Alcaraz, and what we really want to look for is when we compare the two in one chart, the red dotted line is contact, and then the red dot here is Alcaraz, and the blue dot here is Dan. This is max knee bend, so again, when their knees are bent the most. And you can just see that Dan jumps late, right? Dan wants his line to be the same as Alcaraz, which means he would be timing his jump at the same time. So if Dan sees this chart, he'd be like, oh, I am jumping late. The power I've generated in my lower body, because my leg drive is late, it doesn't have time to get into my upper body, go through my arm, go through the racket, and get into the tennis ball. So another way that Dan is leaving power on the table. So before Bert, club players couldn't get this kind of analysis. They couldn't get the insight to be like, oh, I am jumping late, or my hip is going in the wrong direction, my toss is drifting. That kind of measurement just wasn't possible until today. So if you go to the App Store, if you search for Bert AI Tennis Coach, you can download Bert and you can upload a serve. You're gonna get all of these charts, and when you are making a mistake, Bert is gonna tell you how to fix it. Bert is gonna give you a drill that will fix a late leg drive. He'll give you a drill that'll fix a toss that's drifting, whatever. So this is a total game changer, and if you feel like your serve is stuck and it doesn't have as much pace as you want or consistency, go to the App Store, search for Bert AI Tennis Coach, download them to your phone, and take your first lesson.